What about the pieces that this team has added, Vince, in just the past few days?
Oh, dream team.
These words from Eagles backup quarterback Vince Young would send shockwaves throughout the entire NFL. The 2011 Philadelphia Eagles had a free agency class for the ages. One after another, big names around the NFL agreed to sign with the Eagles, who were already a stacked team. All of this hype got the best of Vince Young. When asked what he thought of all the acquisitions, Young responded by labeling the Eagles a dream team. That comment did not fall on deaf ears, and before he knew it, the Eagles were the most polarizing team in the entire league. Now, as we know, this self-proclaimed dream team did not pan out. They were quickly exposed, losing 4 of their first 5 games, and key members of the team would depart not long after. However, this 2011 Eagles team is still very fascinating. They were the NFL's first attempt at a super team, and this was at a time when super teams were a very hot topic in the world of sports. So for this video, we're going to take a closer look at the Dream Team Eagles and find out how they came to be and what exactly happened. So without further ado, let's dive in. Following the 2009 season, the Philadelphia Eagles decided to part ways with franchise quarterback Donovan McNabb. McNabb's contributions to the organization cannot be overstated. Drafted number 2 overall in 1999, McNabb led the Eagles to 4 straight NFC title games and a Super Bowl appearance, all within 4 years. But after that, the success came to a screeching halt. Aside from another NFC title game appearance in 2008, the Eagles were mostly irrelevant for the remainder of McNabb's tenure. The organization took note of this back in 2007 when they selected University of Houston quarterback Kevin Kolb with the 37th pick in the draft. After that, it was only a matter of time before Kolb would take over as the Eagles' starting quarterback. That finally happened in April of 2010, when Donovan McNabb was traded to the Washington Redskins for draft picks. However, the Kevin Kolb era would only last a quarter and a half. In the 2010 season opener, Kolb suffered a concussion and would miss the remainder of the game. His replacement did a pretty good job, good enough to keep Kolb on the bench after he healed. Who was his replacement? Well, none other than Michael Vick. After being reinstated by the league, Vick was picked up by the Eagles in 2009, but was mostly used as a utility player, appearing mostly in wildcat formations. But when he got his shot in 2010, he did not take it for granted. Michael Vick went on to have a Pro Bowl season, and just like that, his career was resurrected. The Eagles would finish with a 10-6 record and come out on top in the NFC East. However, they would suffer a heartbreaking loss to the Packers in the first round of the playoffs. But Eagles fans were still optimistic because it appeared they found their quarterback of the future in Michael Vick. Not long after, Vick signed a 6-year, $100 million contract to remain in Philadelphia. What about Kevin Kolb, you ask? He was dealt to Arizona in the offseason. So much for that whole thing. But what were the Eagles going to do to get to the next level? Because despite having a great season, their win total actually dropped from the previous year, and they did get bounced in the first round, just like in 2009. So what was the next move? Well, the front office had actually been preparing for the 2011 offseason for quite some time. They structured contracts in ways that would help their cap situation when 2011 hit. So when the 2011 free agency period began, the Eagles were hell-bent on making a splash, and this is where the Dream Team was really born. The biggest signing the Eagles made was cornerback Nnamdi Asomugha. Asomugha was previously with the Raiders and he was slowly becoming one of the best corners in the game. There was a sweepstakes to get him and the Eagles were the team that won. This was a huge signing. Next up was Vince Young. At 28 years old, the number 3 pick in the 2006 draft was picked up by the Eagles to be the number 2 quarterback. Young didn't pan out in Tennessee, but his record as a starter was still 30-17, so this was still a high-profile signing, and perhaps it made Michael Vick nervous for maybe a second or two. Next up was Ronnie Brown. The number 2 pick in the 2005 draft was finally moving on from the Dolphins. He didn't quite live up to the expectations of a number 2 pick, but he was still a very serviceable player. This was another great signing. Up next was Jason Babban. Babban was a Pro Bowl defensive end who just came off a 12.5 sack season with the Titans. He appeared to be coming into his own, and the Eagles gave him a 5-year deal worth $28 million. Up next was Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie. A first-round pick in 2008, Cromartie was a pretty solid defensive back for the Cardinals, making the Pro Bowl as a reserve in 2010. Cromartie was actually acquired in the Kevin Kolb trade. Next up was Steve Smith. Not the Steve Smith, but the other Steve Smith who was pretty good in his own right. Smith had a Pro Bowl season in 2009 where he recorded over 100 receptions. He was hoping to pick up from there in 2011. And lastly, we have Cullen Jenkins. Jenkins was a defensive end who had been with the Packers since 2003. He was an integral part of the Packers' 3-4 defense during their Super Bowl run in 2010. Jenkins signed a 5-year, $25 million deal with the Eagles. The Eagles made some other signings, but these were the most notable. With all of these additions, on top of an already stacked roster that included players like Michael Vick, LaShawn McCoy, Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, this 2011 Eagles team was quite literally the dream team, at least on paper. But before any team can be crowned, games have to be played, and that brings us to the start of the 2011 season. In Week 1, the Dream Team made easy work of the lowly St. Louis Rams. They won 31-13, and this was really to be expected. But Week 2 saw the Dream Team lose a heartbreaker to the Falcons. It was a nice back-and-forth game for 3 quarters, but Philly blew a 10-point lead in the 4th quarter and lost 35-31. This is where the wheels start to come off. The Dream Team would suffer 3 more losses in a row, 2 of which were lost in the 4th quarter. When the Eagles were 1-3, Michael Vick went as far as to say the Dream Team label was dead, so I guess I'll call them the Eagles now. Staring at a 1-4 record, the Eagles would pull off 2 wins in a row against the Redskins and Cowboys, and Philly fans began to get a little optimistic. They hoped this would be the start of a turnaround. However, it was not meant to be. The Eagles lost 4 of their next 5 games, and that was pretty much it for them as they could just not get into any kind of rhythm. Vince Young would start in weeks 11 through 13 due to Michael Vick suffering an injury, but Young proved to be no savior. He completed only 57% of his passes and threw just 4 touchdowns to 9 picks. Michael Vick would come back in week 14, but the Eagles were sitting at 4-8, so talk of the playoffs, let alone the Super Bowl, was all but dead. However, in frustrating fashion, the Eagles would actually get it going towards season's end. They closed out the season winning their last 4 games, but it was too little too late. They got hot at the wrong time, and it was really a microcosm of the entire Dream Team experience. The Eagles finished 8-8, which was good enough for second place in the NFC East, but of course there would be no playoffs in their future. What was even more disappointing was how just about every new member of the Dream Team put up abysmal numbers. Aside from Jason Babban, and maybe Colin Jenkins, everyone on the Dream Team stunk it up. Even their leader Michael Vick wasn't up to par. His numbers weren't awful, but he appeared to take a step back. But by far the most disappointing aspect of the Dream Team was how quickly they were disbanded. A number of players didn't even return for the 2012 season. Ronnie Brown, Vince Young, and Steve Smith all departed after 2011. And most of the other members wouldn't last much longer. Jason Babban, Nnamdi Asomugha, Colin Jenkins, and Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie all were gone after 2012. Jason Babban was even cut before the season ended. Amazing. And worst of all, their head coach of 14 seasons, Andy Reid, was fired after a 4-12 finish in 2012. So 2012 was not only the end of the Dream Team, but also the end of a significant chapter in Eagles history. Michael Vick would last until 2013, but his numbers continued to dip every year. He never lived up to the expectations of his big contract. And that is pretty much the story of the Dream Team Eagles. So why didn't it work? How could so many talented players not find a way to put it all together and make a run? Well, in my opinion, there are 2 ways to answer that. The first is in the form of a boring platitude. Great players don't make a great team makes a great team. It doesn't matter how many great players you have, if everyone isn't on the same page, things will go south fast. That was the case with this team. There were reports that Nnamdi Asomugha would go to his car to eat lunch instead of eating with his teammates. This apparently rubbed some people the wrong way and created a rift, further demonstrating this team had zero chemistry, even off the field. And that was just one example. The second possible answer to why the Dream Team didn't work is a harsh one, but it's this. Maybe they were massively overrated. Other than Asomugha, none of these signings in 2011 were superstars. Some of them went their whole career without ever making a Pro Bowl. This whole thing may have just been a tidal wave created by the media. By the way, it's not me saying that, this is what other people have said. In the end, the Dream Team Eagles were a reminder that 1. Football is the ultimate team game, and 2. The only constant in life is change. Maybe Vince Young was aware of this. Maybe he was just living in the moment, having a great time because he knew it wasn't going to last forever. And that actually was the case with him. 2011 was his last year in the NFL. So no matter what you think of the Dream Team, you gotta give them this. There's never been anything like them before or after. We're nearly 10 years removed from the 2011 season, and no team has made any kind of attempt to form a super team. Yes, talented rosters have been assembled, but not in a way that would constitute a dream team. So in that respect, the 2011 Philadelphia Eagles were truly one of a kind. That's going to wrap up this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed learning about the infamous Dream Team Eagles. I was very surprised that no one else had touched this topic yet. I checked and none of the other popular sports channels on YouTube had covered this topic, which is really surprising. I guess it's good to be the first. Anyway, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, make sure you follow me on Twitter, consider supporting me on Patreon, and check out my other YouTube channels. All the links will be in the description. On that note, I'm going to end it. I thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.